Update, guys. We have so many updates recently. So last week we announced that Sugar and Spikes is partnering with Finn Found Her, which is a 2-day online and in-person networking and educational event. The in-person stuff is happening at Evolve Her in Chicago. But like I said, you guys can be a part of it no matter where you are online. We're going to be live streaming stuff. It's an event for female founded businesses and folks that want to fund female founded businesses. The content is fire. It's so good. And Sugar and Spikes is pretty honored to be a part of it and collaborate in any way we can with this organization. So, as a bit of an update from last week, we did share one promo code, but we have something even better during this last week leading up to the event. If you use code SUGARFFH25, you can save $25 off of any ticket, be it 1-day, 2-day, online, in person, any sort of mashup of those options. That code SUGARFFH25 will save you $25. This is an excellent event. Like I said, a lot of great content. We're really excited. And also, don't forget, during Mental Health Awareness Month, we are donating $1 to Project Semicolon for every review that is left on iTunes, be it good, bad, or indifferent. If you post it, we will pay. So yeah, hope to see you at Finn Found Her or on the interwebs during Finn Found Her, and looking forward to your review on iTunes. Now we're going to do the actual show.
Sugar and Spikes is a science-backed and semi-sarcastic mental health podcast for a new type of business leader. Mental health concerns are occasionally addressed, but this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition, mental, physical, metaphysical, or otherwise. That's a job for your doctor or therapist, not a podcast. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
All right. Welcome back, guys.
Hello.
Everyone. Another week, another episode.
Yep.
Another month, another episode. That we did, I guess we released this week's episode in the new month, but it's May. So this is the first episode we're recording this month.
Right. And
Just
somebody
crazy.
was like, oh, they picked a date in May for something that I had to do. And I was like, oh, but that's so far away. And they're like, today is May.
Yeah.
It's now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
Well, and we have Finn Found Her, which, like, in my mind is just like, oh, that's not until May.
Right.
And then, oh, wait, that's a couple weeks away. Okay.
I know. Where's the time gone?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, but there is one thing special about May.
Mm-hmm.
It is everyone's favorite month. It is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
No one knows how to party like mental health professionals. Actually, okay, so side note, I will say the people that I've partied hardest with have been like the crazy brilliant ones, like the dual doctors at UPenn and stuff, like already have their PhDs and are like 6 months away from their MDs. Like, no one knows how to party like,
because think
like
about
crazy
how much
smart people.
stress those people
I know.
Oh my gosh.
But anyways, Mental Health Awareness Month.
Right, and the color is green.
Which is kind of one of our running colors anyways.
And it's really important, right? We talked about in our last episode, 1 in 5 people will be affected by mental illness in their lifetime. And so think about the time to think about how many people are in your circle. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right?
And like this is kind of a good time to check in with any biases that you may have around that. And just kind of, take stock of where you are as well. It's awareness for others, but also this time is awareness for yourself. To see how things are going. And I know one thing that we're doing this month is donating to Project Semicolon for each review we get on iTunes. So $1 per review. And one thing that Tammy and I love about Project Semicolon is online they have pretty quick like assessments, like check-in assessments for things like anxiety, depression, you know, kind of general elements like that, where maybe if you think, you know, maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. If you need some extra feedback, Project Semicolon has some good like evidence-based, well-founded assessments that can help maybe be like, you know, maybe it is time to like reach out to someone, things like that.
Yep. And they have, I thought, they have really good, what am I trying to say? I'm not really here today. Okay, I'm here now. So one thing I like about them too is they have a lot of good resources and a lot of education, like simple educational materials. So that's important to me.
Because it's about accessibility, right? Like that was one reason why we started this podcast, was to have these, you know, this combo hybrid business mental health things in an accessible way, so everyone has like good stuff to go from versus kind of the flowery things and the things that may do more harm than good.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a perfect lead into our
I know.
topic.
I was talking about, and I was like, this is just so. It's so on. Yeah, on
We're
topic.
improving, folks.
This is what happens when you have like cognitive space for things. God.
I know. Oh my goodness. So we wanted to talk this week about this idea that's making the rounds, whatever you want to call it, called toxic positivity.
Well, okay, I don't know if this notion of toxic positivity is really like super popular, because the person I heard it from is not like in on the latest and greatest and all the buzz. It was just like, oh, hey, have you seen this?
It says it's making the Twitter rounds.
Oh, well, I mean, if Twitter's talking about it, then I mean, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, like, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess to open, one thing that I've noticed, like, I wouldn't have thought of it as toxic positivity, and Tammy and I have talked about like the issue with kind of this law of attraction thinking, and you have to think positive and just stay chipper.
Good vibes only.
Yeah, yes. There's actually someone I know, and like no shade, but this person will always buy any like positive vibes or like good vibes only like t-shirts and stuff to just like stay up at that level, which cool, like if that works for you and everything, awesome. I'm not, like I said, like no tea, no shade. And when I see those things, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't. Like,
yeah,
life isn't good vibes only.
It's not.
You can control your response to it, but you can't control your emotions.
Right.
Like in a sense, right?
Well, and if you think about the range of human emotions, it's not just positive. So, like, you're shutting off this whole side of human experience rather than showing acceptance and compassion. And I think that one of the mistakes that has been made, because I was thinking back to like poison, if too much, too little, right? It's in the dose.
Yeah.
So this mindset work, good in small doses.
Yeah, good in medium doses.
Yeah.
For some people, good in large doses. But for everyone, there's going to be a tipping point, and your tipping point may look different. Our tipping point is going to look drastically different than, you know, bright, shiny Orange County girl.
Right.
You know? I'm trying to say things that are super, like, amorphous and vague.
Well, like, here's the thing, right? I think there's been this move towards positive psychology, right? Which is kind of this focus on what's working, focus on strength, focus on positive, rather than focusing on, like, symptoms and what's going wrong as a way to build on people's strengths.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is cool. Like, we need more. Maybe we don't need more, but we need strengths-based perspectives. Like, you and I look at the world through the lens of like everyone's doing the best we can.
Right.
You know? So I would say that's very strength-based. We're giving everyone, like, the most amount of credit we possibly can.
Right.
And we challenge each other on that too. Like, this person's such a, like, awful person. It's like, well, I mean,
we don't know, like,
what just happened to them an hour ago,
right.
things like that.
To, like, build in that perspective. And I think
Mhm.
this focus on positive psychology has come at a really, at a time that it was really needed.
Mhm.
And it seems like in some corners of the internet,
Mhm.
it has turned into this, like, runaway train of
Speeding bullet, man.
good vibes only.
Yeah.
I don't let anything but positivity into my space.
Mhm.
And I don't know. That can do more harm than good,
Mhm.
especially like when we're thinking about mental health awareness and how to be a good advocate and a good ally,
Mhm.
right? So people might have the greatest of intentions
Mhm.
and it may not be helpful to the person sitting in front of you, right? So,
Mhm.
like, saying something like, oh, you'll get over that. Everyone does, or everyone's been through that. You'll be fine,
Mhm.
right? Like, I think you're trying to be positive and supportive and helpful, and
Mhm.
yet it can come off as very dismissive, right?
Yeah.
So, this whole idea of communicating empathy
Mhm.
rather than communicating a need for strength in these moments,
Mhm.
right? Like, you'll be fine, you're a strong person. Like, no, like, that's really hard, and it's hard to
Mhm.
see the good in that, and I get that. How
Mhm.
can I help?
Yeah.
Something like that. And that's obviously not the only way,
Mhm.
but like, you can even say, if you want to be positive, like, this is a really difficult time and you can do difficult things. And I
Yeah.
totally believe in you and I'm here
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah.
That's, and it communicates probably more realistically what you're trying to say with, you'll get over it, you'll move on, it'll be great.
Mhm.
Like, it's just a bump in the road, right? Like, all
Yeah.
those things that we say to other people, I
Mhm.
think when we're trying to really say what I just said.
Yeah. I yes. I mean, really, it comes down to the larger, I think, social trend. And this is just where my brain goes because I live like in social media world, but I think people are a bit over it. Like, yes, there's this one sect where it is like this runaway train where it's good vibes only all the time, and anyone that has anything negative or critical can just go away. Yes, there's that world.
Yeah.
And there are people that are just so fed up with it where it's starting to catch on. And, we're starting to see studies come out that show it's doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
You're suffocating your emotions. You're
Right.
squashing them. That's where you see so many other like maladaptive behaviors come out.
Exactly.
But also like just in terms of like a mirror and it's speaking to the larger social ethos, I guess, is the trend that's happening in Instagram where people are sick of filters
Mm-hmm.
and the shiny, polished, like feeds and stuff. Where, like, one of the most used apps right now is an app that makes it look like photos from the 90s with like scratches and scuff marks and like realistic and taking away the filters and
Like, more gritty.
yeah, because like, I think after 5 years, 10 years, however long social media's really been out there,
Of shiny, happy people.
we're all exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's with that kind of polish on things,
Mhm.
it communicates that it's our job to paint this, like, picture of positivity
Mhm.
and to live up to the Instagram world that everybody's built. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, oh, they're shiny and happy, I have to sparkle too,
Yeah.
right? Um, when it really, life isn't sparkly all the time.
I mean, the thing is I don't know why I always go back to role theory, but it was like one of the most influential undergrad lessons of my life.
Yes.
But all the world's a stage, right?
Mhm.
And if we think about social media, you gear up, you put on all of the things that lend itself to that role, and that's all we see, but we don't see the stress and anxiety and all the things that happen up till then.
Or all the work that went into creating it,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Like well, I don't know, like what my story's gonna look like today and things like that. Or this is lame, but I have to do it because something says I have to.
Right.
I think, yeah, I think everyone is ready for something a bit more real. And that's not to say to dwell on the negativity, but just like authentic connection.
Yeah, and I don't think it's dwelling on negativity, right? Like
Mhm.
there's this idea that there are good emotions and there are
Mhm.
bad emotions. And really, we need to remove those labels and say
Mhm.
this is the range of emotional human experience
Mhm.
and have some compassion for ourselves when
Yeah.
we do tend to feel those more difficult emotions that
Mhm.
don't make us feel great.
Yeah. I mean, I would be very concerned if you came to me and said you got in a huge fight with your partner, but it's fine, everything works out and you're like feeling okay with it because good vibes
Or
only.
even like happy,
Yeah.
like
I'm
crazy
glad
person
I'm glad I
happy.
got those emotions out, which yes, like
Right,
you could be, but I would be concerned if there wasn't an element of and I'm hurt or,
right.
if there wasn't an element of
It's created concerns in this way. It's
mhm.
created like pain in this way, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
like not being able to feel those and recognize those. I think that's the biggest disservice that this cult of positivity is creating is losing the ability to name and identify and manage these other emotions.
Well, yeah, because what else comes with that whole kind of movement is
Mhm.
this idea that if we do feel emotions that aren't positive and happy,
Mhm.
then we feel guilty about it. We feel like
Mhm.
something's wrong with us, and then we feel shameful,
Mhm.
right? And so, in order to live up to the expectations and pressure that we're putting on ourselves, you have to kind of divorce yourself
Mhm.
from that aspect of your experience.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in order to resolve things, you have to see them as they really are.
Mhm.
You have to feel them as they are. You have
Mhm.
to know that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
That's like the paradoxical problem with change, right? Is you desperately want to change, and until you can view it exactly as it is,
Mhm.
change is almost not possible.
Yeah, that made me think of kind of some stuff that was going on a while ago. And I'm going to take this moment to take ownership of like kind of perpetuating the idea of toxic positivity. Like in my Facebook memories, something came up from last year where I wrote this whole thing about like spiraling upward and
Mm.
just like working yourself into I didn't use these words, but working yourself into a lather of it's fine, it's going to be great, and like being your biggest champion. Like, yeah, I posted that. I think we've talked about shifting your emotions on the podcast, which is a good skill. But I was in a place for a while where the situation was so bad but I was refusing to acknowledge it and just trying to channel everything into this positive form. Like it's all gonna be for a purpose and blah blah like
Trying to smile it better.
yeah, exactly. And all that was doing was making me feel nuts. And again, like I was using maladaptive
But
behaviors.
that's what we're taught, though, right?
Yeah.
Again, going back to we're doing the best we can,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. So I think I guess my point with that is no one's immune and
Absolutely not.
yes, we've been a voice kind of that. It also goes back to there's a time and a place for
Right.
everything. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. So with where I was in terms of that toxic positivity spiraling upward situation was that was going on for 2 years
Hmm.
and nothing about it was getting better. Things were getting worse.
Right.
Like at some point I needed to step back and be like,
Hold on a minute.
what's actually happening?
Right.
I think that's the thing is like persistent and consistent, like pasting a smile on and saying it's okay versus doing it in a moment when you need to.
Right. Well, it's that whole idea that we're really about, which is it depends, right? It does. And when we've talked about reframing situations in the past and things like that, there's time for that.
Yeah.
But there's also times to encourage yourself to be honest in acknowledging how we feel. And if it's on the more negative side of things, we tend to push it away. We tend to not want to look at it because they're painful things to feel. And that's when, like, I mean, what was I trying to say? I lost my train of thought.
Well,
but go ahead.
Okay, it made me think of something. So while you try to catch that train again, negative emotions can be viewed as like I don't know, like your emotional pain receptors. Like if you touch the stove and the fire's hot, you know to not do that. If you are in a situation and you don't feel good about it and things aren't going good, it's your body and mind's way of saying, "Hey, get out of that situation." And by like standing at the stove with your hand on the fire and being like, "It's fine, it's all fine," you're just getting burned.
Exactly. That's great. I love that. You encapsulated it really nicely. Show over.
No, I'm just done. Mic drop.
But it's true. It's true. And also, we equate negative with bad. And
they're unnecessary values.
Right. And those aren't synonyms in this case. Because there aren't good emotions and bad emotions. There are just emotions.
Yeah.
And there's ones that are tougher to feel and experience and go through. And there's ones that are easier. And there's a time and a place for the whole range of that experience.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we've been talking in pretty broad terms, but these concepts can be applied to kind of wherever you are in terms of like if you're at a job and you're getting like this consistent like negative emotional feedback, like your job could be the fire.
Yeah.
You know, like you could be standing in the fire and just like making yourself sick. We've heard so many stories of that.
So many.
Where like there's someone that gave a presentation when I was in grad school where she would throw up on her drive every day.
That's tough.
And it didn't register. Like the thing is when you're in it, things don't register the way you would think they would.
Well, that's why the need for advocacy and allyship is so strong.
Well, and that's where the whole, like going back to the buck up thing is really toxic, because even if people are like, well, maybe it's not a great thing, but you know what you're doing and this is leading to something better. No, maybe it's not. Like you're not being a good friend if you know someone is throwing up on their drive to work because they're so sick and anxious about their boss. And you're like, get through it, it's fine. Like that's when you need someone to be like, this is awful, stop.
Like, have you thought about this? Right? And encourage that. But that's allyship. That's advocacy. That's saying like, hang on a minute. I can't let you continue down this road without at least saying like, hey, let's examine this.
Yeah.
Right? And then if the person does decide to move forward, that's their choice. And at least you know that they've looked at it, examined
informed
it.
decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Rather than just the blinders on going down the road. And sometimes I feel like, and I've had people say to me, well, I don't want to just, what are you saying? Like, I just need to fall apart at work. And I'm like, I'm not saying that. I am definitely.
It's interesting that you're hearing that.
Right. I'm like, I'm definitely not saying that. Right. And so it's this feeling, but what that clues me into is that they feel like if they were to really feel their feelings, that they would be a mess. Right.
Yeah. Tape and glue.
Right. So like that says something.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't say like, hey, everything's fine here.
Yeah.
It says the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's at least like a clue that we need to explore that some more. Right. There's definitely time for contain. there's definitely time for do this in this time in this place. But
we're huge fans of boundaries,
Right.
Emotional, physical, all the boundaries all the time.
Right.
But knowing what's within those and what's within those boxes.
Right.
That's where the work is.
Right.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No. Because maybe you hold it in at work and examine it later. Not hold it in at work, hold it in at home, hold it in out with your friends, hold it in while you're shopping, hold it in back at work again, and so on and so on and so on, where you're caught in like this cycle of avoidance that you can't get out of.
Well, and the thing with holding it in one respect, like I would say, like, if you know you're actively, like, setting those boundaries, there needs to be a time to actively explore. Like, if you know you're holding it in at work, carving out time in some shape or form to manage those things is important, because if you do hold those emotions in at work and like keep them stifled, you're going to start holding emotions in other places.
Right.
And that's where the boil over really starts to happen, because our brains are lazy and they like to be in like the most consistent state. So if like staying in that state of keeping things inward is consistently going, it's going to go into other areas of your life.
Well, yeah, because you come to that this idea of you don't pick and choose what emotions to shut off. If you're going to shut off all of these over here, the positive ones are eventually going to go too. Right? So then you get into this state where you're like completely disconnected from your emotions and can't even identify what you're feeling. You're kind of just in this numb state, right?
Yeah.
So I would say like work on validating all your emotions rather than feeling this need to force positivity on yourself or to feel like you're in a position of having to do that to other people.
So if folks have been kind of in the state of always positive all the time and maybe need to rediscover their emotions or kind of snap out of it, what are a couple things that they may want to do or try?
Oh, that's a great that's a great stall for time. I didn't know I didn't know I was
question.
giving tips and tricks today.
Always tips and tricks.
Well, I mean, the first thing is to find a trusted person, a friend, a therapist, whoever, and say, or maybe you're not even to that point yet.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to sit for a minute and be like, what am I feeling? Am I really feeling like this good? And sometimes if we're so disconnected from our emotions that we can't even identify the emotions, sometimes our thoughts and feelings in our body can like clue us in, right? So like, what thoughts are you having? Okay, what is going on in your body? And then matching that up with an emotion. Because like, it's just a way to give you clues to be able to start to identify again the true emotion that you're having.
Yeah. I would say a body scan would be one of the easiest ways to check in around stress, anxiety, anger, anything like that. Because our body stores that stuff. And like, if you don't know what a body scan is, it's essentially like thinking about like, well, how do I feel like you can explain it, because you explain it more often than I do. I haven't explained it since grad school.
So it's an activity of thinking very deliberately about the areas of your body and where you may be holding tension and stress or any places where you feel uncomfortable. So you can do that in a quiet space. You can do it with somebody can walk you through it. You can do it on your own. There's lots of directions on the internet. Like,
yeah.
But it's helpful because it's like, oh, yeah, it can help you also get back in tune with your body because our body gives us signals to our emotions. And so when we're ignoring those, we end up really stressed or like, and I am encouraging people right now, if you're saying, I'm stressed and I'm frustrated, and those are the only two ways you have to explain what you're feeling, you need to do some work.
Yeah.
Right? We stop there. it's a way of identifying, like, I don't feel great right now, and I'm going to just label it as stress and keep going.
I'm stressed, I'm busy, I'm tired. If those are your go-tos.
Frustrated.
Yeah.
Angry.
Annoyed. Now we're just naming emotions.
Well, no, because like anger, right? The umbrella.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Well, they're the most like socially acceptable ones, right? Like that's the thing. If you personally can't name additional emotions, I'm not saying you have to go to someone and be like, I'm feeling this way, but if you stop at the socially acceptable ones and can't name something else, it's time to do a little bit of inner work. And the thing with the body scan, what I was going to say is like, you'll notice things you weren't expecting to notice. Like anytime I do one, I always have to unclench my jaw. Like always. But like I know like that's where I keep stress. There are like two areas. My jaw and my eyes are always just like I always have to relax my face.
It makes us more aware. It makes us it brings things that are kind of automatic into more conscious awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a mindfulness practice, right?
So that, and yeah, again, going back to the emotion words.
And, you know, if you have friends you can go to for support, this is a good time for that.
Yeah.
Therapists, great for this. I'm a huge advocate of therapy, obviously.
A decent coach. Be careful of the coaches you pick.
Yep. And therapists.
Yeah. All depending on what you need or want.
And fit.
Yeah, exactly.
Find someone who fits with you.
And we've talked about that, right? Like the research shows us it doesn't matter the level of education. For most things, it doesn't matter the level of education or what the title is. If it fits, that's where you're going to see the most change.
Yeah, it's connection, right? So like overall, it's like therapist and client connection is what accounts for most of the change in therapy.
Exactly.
Right. So I hope people take away this sense of having emotional courage, right?
Yeah.
And rather than pushing away, we're going to lean into things a little bit more.
Yeah.
And support people in the same way.
Yeah.
Right? So, like what we talked about before.
Okay. It's kind of it for this episode. We wanted to set like some good, I don't know, ground expectation. I want to say ground rules, but that's not like right.
I hope it's helpful. I hope it brings awareness and a new level of like personal understanding and knowledge that emotions need attention.
Yeah. Especially during this month. So again, if you guys think maybe there's something more, check out Project Semicolon. They have quick like tools and assessments. Don't forget, leave us a review on iTunes, and for every review it's $1 to Project Semicolon. If you want more just general information about mental health and Mental Health Awareness Month, you can go to NAMI's website. And yeah.
Or you can always check in with your primary care doctor or look for an organization that does therapy in your area.
Exactly. And if you have any questions, comments, critiques, criticisms about the podcast, we are all ears. sugarandspikespod.com or just on Instagram at sugarandspikespod.
Cool.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, friends.
All right, guys, that wraps up this show. Hope you liked it. Just wanted to remind you, go register for Finn Found Her. Use code SUGARFFH25. Save $25 off of any ticket option, online, in person, single day, 2-day, whatever. It's choose your own adventure. And don't forget to leave your review on iTunes so we can donate some money to Project Semicolon and help spread mental health awareness for everybody. We will talk to you next week and hopefully see you at Finn Found Her.